My name is Eloise Schottler. I am a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. I'm always looking for stories. And was I lucky? The holiday weekend, I went to North Carolina to visit my family. We'd been out for a really wonderful Thanksgiving dinner, all traditional Southern foods. My taste buds were just swimming in memory from my childhood tasting that food, especially the cornbread. As we drove out of the parking lot of a restaurant called the Wee Old Kitchen, Country Kitchen, Ye Old Country Kitchen, my daughter pointed to a field across the highway and she said, "I've never seen that before." And it was a stand of stalks that had been cotton, and they'd been picked, but not completely because there were shreds of white blowing in the wind. Well, my brother-in-law looked over there and he said, "Oh, that's a cotton field. That's a cotton field. They just didn't get all of it off." My mother used to tell me stories about how she picked cotton when she was a young girl on a farm down in North Carolina. Her family had a farm. When she was about 12 years old, she said she'd put two big sheets together and then she'd drag them down the aisles between those cotton rows all day long from sunup to sundown, picking the cotton. It was heavy work, but in her family, all of them worked on the land. It was their land, and they lived from what they did there. They didn't have a lot of money, but they ate well, they lived well, and they were happy. He went on later to tell us some other things about his mother, and I began to be very impressed with her, a woman who from an early age knew what it was to be an entrepreneur. Why, when she got married very young and they moved away from the farm, she and her husband and a few of her kids, into a nearby town, she took one of the cows with her. She took one of the cows so that she would have her own milk and her own butter for the family. And one of the reasons she wanted that milk and that butter was because she made a delicious pound cake. She made it for her family, and once someone tasted, they wanted her to make it for them. Well, she did, and she sold it to them, both to add money in the family pockets. Her husband had a job, but there were always the ends just weren't meeting. So she needed a little more money, and the other thing was this was a woman who had a dream. She wanted a piano. She wanted a piano. He didn't know why. She never said why she wanted it. And you know something? She couldn't play it. But she was saving up for the day she could buy a piano of her own. Now, in that little town where they lived, after they had moved there with their cow, and she was making her pound cakes, and people were expecting to have them, the town passed an ordinance, a little new law that said you couldn't have livestock within the limits, the town limits. And of course, they were living in the town limits. So this meant her cow had to go, and it did. And that brought an end to the pound cake business. But this was a woman who had her eye on the ball. She kept her eye out and she saw what was happening around her. And the first thing you know, she had signed up to be an Avon Lady. Now, do you remember the Avon ladies? I do. When I was a little girl, the lady would knock on the front door and she had her sample case with her, and I might sit beside my mama on the couch while she showed her all those beautiful goodies, particularly the perfumes. Ooh, everything in that case smelled so good, and it might be white roses or violets or some other flower. might be the scent that she was selling at that time. And the creams all smelled so good, and they came in little pretty jars. You remember that? Well, she took up the Avon business. She became an Avon Lady, because that's how that company worked, is that you signed on to be a representative in a certain area, and you ordered your supplies. And then when you were ready, you packed up your little case with all the demos and the supplies in it, and you went out for the day, or however much time you had, and you went from door to door. This business was built on personal relationships, on a woman's ability to knock on a door and talk to another woman, to sell her a product that she believed in, and that was also a high quality product. Now, he went on to tell about how his mother did her business. She didn't have a car when she started out, which must have been in the 30s or early 40s. She didn't have a car, so she got on the bus and she rode to the farthest edge of her district. She had her case, she was dressed up really nice, she was a pretty woman, and she looked it. She was well taken care of, she looked good. She had on a pretty dress, and she got off the bus at the end of the line where her district was starting. And she turned around and she started walking back and knocking on doors, house to house, all the way back to her house. She never got tired, because she always sat down and talked to the lady that opened the door and that wanted to see what she had to sell and who bought what she had to sell. She was a good saleswoman. And time went on, and she won national awards. National awards. And every time she sold product, she put it away, some of that money, for her piano. And one day, she bought one. It's an upright, I've seen it. It's an upright, beautiful piano, chestnut color looking. It's an upright piano, sits in my sister's living room, as a matter of fact, and he told me about his mama. When she got the piano, she was so excited when it came. But you know, she didn't know how to play. She'd never had any music lessons. So she sat down with the piano and she taught herself to play the tunes and the songs that she wanted, because she could hear the music by ear. She taught herself by ear to play the piano for the children, for the family, and she played really well. We loved to have her play the piano. Now, this woman had started selling Avon product in her own business, because an Avon Lady, in case you haven't realized it, has a business of her own with the Avon Company, selling their products. She had a business of her own out of her house until she was 92 or so. And once she couldn't make that ride on the bus anymore to the end of the line and walk back, she had a room in her house where she kept all of her inventory, all of her stock, and people would call her and they would stop by and they would pick up their favorite thing, their cosmetic, their lipstick, their perfume. They would stop by and they would buy it to her without her even coming out to the house. She won awards. I've seen one. It's a ceramic woman's figure dressed in a long dress, about 1900 it looks like, carrying her little black case. Dress all the way to the floor, gloves, proper hat, and it sits on a stand underneath a glass globe. Certainly something to be proud of in your living room. Well, when I heard the story of this woman who went into business for herself, who wanted something, who had a dream for a piano, and she found a way to get it for herself, I didn't know that much about Avon, so I looked up some stuff. And I'm glad I did. Avon was started as a company in 1886. That company's 125 or 126 years old, by a man, David McConnell. He was an Irish immigrant son who lived on a farm in upstate New York. And his own business that he started out was as a bookseller. And he went house to house selling books. Well, look how smart he was. He made perfume to start with as a giveaway so that the lady of the house who came to the door would want some of this beautiful perfume and would let him in to sell her a book or two. And what he noticed as he was doing this and selling and going house to house and meeting all these women was, number one, they loved the perfume. And number two, they had to struggle sometimes to make ends meet, that they could really have used some extra money in their family. But in those days, in 1886 and a few years after that, the only way that women really worked out of the home was in agriculture, on the farm, in domestic service, and we all know about that, in domestic service as someone's maid, or in manufacturing, working long, arduous hours in a manufacturing place. And those were not safe places to work. So he realized, because he also saw that these women were verbal, they could talk, and that he saw the possibilities that they would be good salespeople if they believed in the product. And he formed the Avon Company. The Avon Company, which was built on direct marketing, person to person, belief in a product, and one person selling it to another person. And over the years, it's grown and grown and grown, and it's networking. Networking wasn't born 10 years ago. Networking was really born 125 or so years ago. And this company empowered women. Empowered women to have a source of income that they wouldn't have had any other way, and it helped to build stronger families. I heard about one woman who was entrepreneurial, who saw the possibilities of going into business for herself. And it opened the door for me to find out about all the others who had done it for all these years. And I share it with you. I'm proud of those four mothers. And it makes me really feel proud and happy to learn about women who looked at their lives and took charge in a way that would really build and foster the strength of their families. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you'll come back. We'll have another story next week.